Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, and in this video we're going to be discussing variables, constants and computed properties. So let's get right in. So let's start here. So what are variables and constants? Well, in programming you'll see the term variable and constants used a lot. So basically, variable and constant are properties that allow you to store a value of a particular type. Now, this type may be an integer, a string, a boolean, or an array. We'll get more into data types later on in another video, but in this video, we're just going to focus on variable, constants, and computed properties. So with a variable, it basically allows you to store a value and then you can change that value again in the future. But constants in Swift are a bit different. So constants in Swift allow you to set the value, but once you set the value, that is it. You cannot change it once it's been set. So if we look at declaring variables and constants, there is a bit of a difference in terms of the syntax. So let's look at a variable. So here we have a variable called first name with my name in it. And you can see here the syntax is var and then the name of the variable equals to the value. But when declaring a constant, it's a bit different. So if we look at constants, you can see rather than using var, we now use let. So we have let, then bm property name, first name, and then the value. So in the first one variable, I could actually change the first name from Tundi to Billy. But in the second one constant, if I was to change it from Tundi to Billy, it will give me an error. Now you're probably wondering, where would I use a variable and where would I use a constant? Well, you want to use a variable when you know that the value is going to change later on. So let's say, for example, you're storing a value of a property which contains a user's name, for example. A user could edit their name because they might have mistyped it wrong. But if you want to use a constant, you want to use a constant when you know that that value definitely isn't going to change. And a good rule of thumb is using it for stuff like API keys, or let's say, for example, if you have like a maximum limit for a value, so someone can only enter in 500 characters, then it'll be good to use a constant to hold that value 500 to make sure that it doesn't change. So when we're using variables and constants, there's something called type inference. What is it and when to use it? So basically, type inference is the type of the variable. So if we look at this example here, we have a variable called percentage and it's holding the value 1.0. But the problem that we have here is we don't know what that 1.0 type is, because in Swift, it could be either a double or a CG float. So with type inference, we basically specify the type that we want this variable to be. So you can see here at the bottom that we now made it more clear to the compiler and to the user that this property percentage is a CG float. So now when we're using this, it's clear. So moving on, what should we name our properties? So when naming properties, you want to make sure that the name is clear and descriptive. So you want to make sure that the property name, describes what the variable's purpose is. So let's say, for example, in this scenario, we have it where we need to declare a variable for the stock limit of items. So we have two declarations here. So we have the first one where we specify a CG float variable called item stock limit, and we have another one called X CG float. So when looking at these two, I'm hoping you can guess and realize which one isn't the descriptive one. So obviously the more descriptive one is the one on the left and the less descriptive one is the one on the right. So if you as a developer and you as a developer, if you was to leave this project now for like 3 to 4 months and then come back later on, because the variable's been named item stock limit, you know that this is what, the purpose of that variable is, compared to you leaving this and then as X and then coming back and being like, what does X even mean? You have no idea. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to jump into the code and we're actually going to type this we're actually going to use properties and constants using Xcode Playgrounds just to see it in action. So let's get started. Okay, cool. So we're in the playground in Xcode. If you don't know how to create a playground, all you need to do is just literally go to File, New, and then File, New, and then Playground here, and then hit that, and then just basically select the blank one, and then give it a name, and then save it wherever you want to save it. But I've already got one open here, so we're going to use this one. So what we're actually going to do now is we're actually going to create our variable. So create our variable. So this variable is going to basically be a integer which holds the number of Apple products. So I'm just going to declare it. So you can see var number of Apple products, and then we're going to declare this as a type integer, and then we're just going to give that the value of 4. And as you can see, that's pretty much it in terms of defining variables. So pretty straightforward. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to see the value inside of this variable to see if it's 4. So on Swift Playgrounds, if you just hit the play button up to this line here, it will actually execute that. So it should just execute now. Cool. And now you can see here the value on the side here, it's saying that it's stored inside of it is 4. So now that we've done our variable, let's create our constant. But with our constant, we're going to use something called string interpolation. So basically, it's just a fancy word for saying manipulating strings. So we're going to combine this with another string. So let's do that. So we'll put another comment here called create our constant. And we'll basically, in this constant, what we're going to do is we're just going to basically just print a message to the console with the amount of the number of Apple products that we own in that variable. So let's create a new constant called total products. And then we'll just basically, we won't declare this one of type string because it will automatically infer it. So we don't need to declare it. So I'm hoping you're seeing here now, like if you're using a certain data type, that the compiler can automatically pick up the type that it is that you're trying to use. So with this string, we're just going to say you own and then Apple products. So what we're going to do here is in between own and Apple, just put a space slash, and then the parentheses, and inside of here, this is where we're going to basically put our integer. But you can see here, it'll give you an error to say you can't. So in here, we can't actually put our integer inside of a string like this. So what we're going to do is, we're actually going to put our number of Apple products inside of this string here. So now we'll print out the message. So you can see on the right hand side, that it's actually done this where it says you own 4 Apple products, which is right because we've got 4 here. But what we want to do is we actually want to print this to the console. So let's type in the print, and then all we're going to do is just type in here total products. And then what we're just going to do now is we're literally just going to hit play after line 11. And you can see here in the console, it prints out you own 4 Apple products. So hopefully you saw here how to work with constants and variables. So the next thing we're going to do now is we're actually going to look at how to work with and what are computed properties. So what are computed properties? So computed properties allow you to run some code in order to calculate the value. So when we look at the syntax of a computed property, you can see here how we have a computed property called greeting message. So what we're basically saying here is we want to basically call this greeting message. It's of type string, and what we want to do is we want to execute this line where we return a string where it says hello there. Now you don't just have to return strings in a computed property, you can actually return different types of data. So it could be an integer, it could be a bool, it could even be an array. All you need to know is that you can basically execute some code inside of the curly braces And it's also worth noting as well that with computer properties, they can't be constants, so they have to start with var. So now that we saw the syntax for computer properties, let's go back into the code and let's write one of these out ourselves. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to basically create a computer property that displays your name and the total products constant that we have here and prints this to the console again. So let's get started. So let's just write a comment here. So create our computed property. And then what we're going to do is we're going to type the var. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to call this variable. We're just going to call it something like we said before, called like greeting message. And it's going to be of type string. I'm just going to do the curly braces first. Yep. So now what we need to do is we need to actually add some computation in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to just do this all on one line. So I'm going to say return, and I'm going to put my name. So hi Tundi, and then we're going to use string interpolation again. So I'll just put a comment there, and then we're going to do slash parentheses total products. And then what we're going to do is we're going to print greeting message to the console. And you can see here, it says, hi Tundi, you own 4 Apple products. And obviously on the side there. So we've got our desired outcome. So hopefully this showed you how to use variables, constants, and computer properties. To help you get a clearer and greater understanding of this, I've actually set you guys a challenge, and we'll actually go through the solution in the next video that I'm going to upload. So let's look at this challenge now. Right guys, so the challenge that I want you guys to do for variables, constants, and computer properties is the following. So first of all, I want you guys to create 2 variables in a playground where its value can be changed, and I want you to store these variables and to store your first name and your last name. So you have to think about the namings of what you want to call these variables. Technically I just gave you the answer, but we'll see if you figure it out. So the next one, the next point, so point 2 is I'm going to then create a constant which stores the first name and the last name as a full name. So just give you a clue, you've probably got to use string interpolation. And then finally, I want you guys to basically create a computer property that welcomes you by saying hello, and then using the constant from before prints this into the console so you can see it. So these are the 3 things that I want you to do. Try this out, and in the next video I'll actually give you a solution. So don't just skip to the next video. Try and attempt this, and then look at the next video to see how you would approach this, and then we'll go from there. So that's everything for this video, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any feedback, please feel free to put it into the comment section. If that's everything, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Deuces.